A speaker of truth has no friends. African Proverbs. If you believe that our plight is connected to a Bible that was in fact written by our most ungodliest enemies, and that was also brutally beaten into the blood-soaked minds of our enslaved ancestors, and if you also believe that we're being controlled by a silly slave syndrome myth, which presents what would in fact be the least effective and least plausible method used for controlling generations of millions of people. If either or both of these are your beliefs, you are among those of us who are ignorant and mentally enslaved. Whenever people are kept ignorant and mentally enslaved, they'll always believe nonsense. Because to the ignorant and the mentally enslaved, nonsense makes perfect sense. And they'll therefore make enemies of anyone who points out the flaws within their beliefs. I know I'm upsetting some people with this, but the truth doesn't give a damn about your feelings. This is why a speaker of truth has no friends. African proverb. Furthermore, in the age of information, Black ignorance and Black mental enslavement are now choices. You can choose to either learn the truth and begin the emancipation of your mind from your own ignorance and mental enslavement, or you can stay ignorant and mentally enslaved and go from your cradles to your grave, never knowing the truth, and therefore having lived your entire life being kept ignorant and mentally enslaved to the joy of your evil oppressors. The truth of our plight and condition is that our conniving evil oppressors controls everything that we believe. They've transformed this fact into their greatest weapon used against Black people. It's the true reason why millions of us now perceives ourselves as being our own worst enemies. It's why many of us believes that we're the cause of all that's wrong, believe that we're lesser than whites, also believes that we made the N-word ours. It's also the reason why many of us believe that slavery benefited us and that most of our ancestors were sold away. It's also why many of us now reveres our evil oppressors in spite of such a brutally horrific history of the contrary. We've been brainwashed to think in ways that benefits the white society. This is all possible because regardless of how intelligent people are, if it's possible to control the input of information that people receive, it's entirely possible to control what they'll believe. Through their monopoly over the information and media images that Black people constantly and systematically receives, white oppressive forces have manipulated millions of Black people to think in ways that are against our own self-interest and in ways that instead serves and protects the interests of their white society. This is achieved by keeping us believing the fraudulent worst about ourselves. Sadly, to our own detriment, the oppressed will always believe the fraudulent worst about themselves. That is a quote from Frantz Fanon. Those Black people who insist that they've confirmed their negative assessments about our racial group based upon their own individual experiences are in fact delusional. Because it's not humanly possible to accurately assess the collective state of millions of people based upon anyone's individual experiences. It's not humanly possible. These negative generalizations being made about our own racial group among us were deliberately embedded into our minds by deceptive white sources, more specifically by white propagandists, media propaganda campaigns. And the reason why many Black people think that they've confirmed their negative assessments based upon their own individual experiences is because once a false belief has been successfully embedded into the human mind, the individual will then only notice those incidents that appears to confirm the false embedded belief and will become psychologically blinded from noticing the greater amount of evidence refuting the false embedded belief. Then based upon this psychological blindness, the person will insist that he's seeing it for himself that the false belief is true, although it's in fact not. When you're told a lie enough time, it becomes a part of your reality. You begin to only see those things that appears to confirm the lie. This is what has been done to us. While black people studied our Bibles, believing that it contained the true words of God that will protect us, white oppressive forces studied instead the human mind, how it works, and more specifically, how to hijack the group minds of targeted populations through their monopoly over information that the targeted population receives. They then use that gained knowledge to mentally enslave millions of black people. Those of us who are telling you the truth are trying to free you from a mental prison that you don't even know you're trapped within. Those black people who don't critically think never notices their mental chains. This is the true reality that they've psychologically blinded millions of black people from now seeing. This is why those of us who sees it, those of us who know the truth, must teach African proverb. The white media's unrelenting negative depictions of black people that amplifies the negative to the point that it distorts our reality. It's much more than just biased media reporting. It is actually an insidious black racially demoralizing divide and rule psychological warfare campaign. Demoralized divide and rule is the method of maintaining control over a targeted population through constant and unrelenting demoralization in order to create self-hatred and division between the targeted population. This propaganda campaign is deployed like a massive media marketing campaign that constantly subjects the black population to receiving only the fraudulent and worst narratives about ourselves. Within this system, fraudulent black racially demoralizing propaganda is being pumped unrelentingly into the unsuspecting minds of the black population without being challenged or counterbalanced by an equal amount of black positive racially affirming information. It conveys the subliminal message that black people are now our own worst enemies and that we therefore need whites to govern over our lives. Moreover, that black people should admire, respect, and trust only whites. This system is extremely effective because when black people are repetitively presented these noted narratives from trusted white media sources, it can be very difficult to resist its implied propaganda programming, especially when the propaganda is being told daily and so unrelentingly. With time being unable to refute the constant negative information that's being told about us, many black people eventually comes to accept it. We internalize it. And many black people then experience profound feelings of humiliation. We ask ourselves, damn, why we can't get our act together? Why we can't get our shit together? Damn. This unrelenting humiliation then causes many black people to become demoralized, divided, self-loathing, and resentful towards our own people. In the most extreme cases, many black people will even attempt to disassociate themselves from the black masses. Psychologists call this disassociation. It's a defense mechanism that evolves to put a distance between themselves and from the pain. Some black people will even go out of their way and make it their personal mission to show white people that we're not all bad. These are the ones that we call coons. They merely have weaker mental fortitudes. That's why their minds are the way it is. This propaganda campaign also creates black self-hatred and disunity, which attacks the core foundation of what bonds us as a people. And as long as they keep us within this collective condition, we can then be ruled over forever. This is all possible because people can be easily controlled by the information that they repeatedly receive about themselves. It is a social science fact. When people are constantly fed positive and affirming information about themselves, this has a positive effect upon them. This raises their collective self-esteem and it unifies them. And it doesn't matter if the information presented is untrue. Most people will act accordingly to the information because they've all been given the same information. So they function based upon it. However, when people are constantly fed negative, demoralizing disinformation about themselves, the exact opposite happens. They become demoralized, divided, self-loathing, and they become more compliant with their oppressor's dominance over their lives. And again, it doesn't matter that the information presented is untrue. Most people will act accordingly because they've all been given the same disinformation about themselves. This is what has been done to Black people by the white society. The problem has never been a silly damn Willie Lynch myth. It's a process with the objective to erode the morale of a targeted population through continuous demoralization. By destroying a targeted population's morale, it can even prevent their will to fight. And it's very effective. No group can be constantly subjected to receiving only the fraudulent, worst, demoralizing narratives about themselves and not suffer some adverse effect. People are easily controlled by the information that they receive about themselves, especially when they're unaware that the information has been distorted to invoke specific responses from them. This nefarious psychological warfare campaign works by tapping into the immense power that shame has upon the human mind to mentally enslave millions of Black people. This psychological warfare system provides the white oppressors with a more proficient method used for controlling and subjugating Black people, given that it isn't easily recognized, nor is it easily comprehended by most of its Black victims. For unlike the past blatant racist Jim Crow systems that Black people were easily able to identify and therefore unify ourselves against and develop counter strategies against, this system is not easily recognized nor easily comprehended by its Black victim. It allowed the white society to oppress us while manipulating us to believe that we're our worst enemies. This psychological warfare program is at the root of the profound feelings of division and self-hatred now afflicting many Black people. It is the truth of our plight and condition. We must function based on what is true in order to liberate ourselves, because if our understandings are flawed, then all of our remedies will be flawed. This is why I must tell you the truth. The minds of targeted populations are quite easy to manipulate when they're unaware of what's being done to them. Once minds have been confused, manipulation becomes simple. The mind will even ignore common sense, and rationality falls away, even overlooking hypocrisy and deception. Naturally, some of you will ask, why is it that we're so susceptible to this type of programming? Why? Here's your answer. The reason why we're susceptible to this programming is because the white society have programmed our minds to blindly accept whatever they tell us to accept and believe. They began this programming of our minds to blindly accept what they tell us to believe during our early education and development, when our minds are young and most impressionable. During our educational development, we are taught not to critically think for ourselves, but we are instead taught what to think and what to believe. We are taught that this is this and that is that, and we're conditioned to perceive the white society as being the authorities of all what's true, in spite of their brutally, notoriously deceitful history of the contrary. They programmed us to accept whatever they tell us. And if a student attempts to challenge what he or she is taught, the student is then admonished and labeled as being disruptive. This is how they condition us from the time we were young to accept what they tell us to believe. That conditioning and that programming follows us throughout our entire lives. And the white society tells us what to believe. And everything they tell us are mental enslaving lies, that we're less than them, we're worse than them, that slavery benefited us, that our ancestors were illiterate and ignorant before they enslaved them, or that most of our ancestors were sold by Africans. They tell us lies that shapes our perceptions and our mindsets in ways that serve the white society. It's time to wake up to our reality. You think our worst enemies are the KKK and the skinheads. They're just distraction. Those are low-level idiots. Our greatest enemies are the social engineering scientists and the white propagandists who are well-educated. And those are the ones who are manipulating our minds, manipulating the masses. Brothers and sisters, it's time to wake up to our reality. One love and peace.